All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Frank Carone. Frank, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you, Kevin. It's a great privilege and pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I have been looking forward to this. And I want to start off by giving a shout out to Brianna and the folks over at the Interview Valet platform because without them, without Brianna in specific, Frank, I doubt you and I would even be talking today. And I am incredibly grateful for Brianna and those folks and what they do. I'll just put it out there really quick that. I interviewed Tom, the founder of Interview Valley, probably about a year and a half ago for the podcast, and ever since then, through that process, I was working with Brianna on stuff on a couple things, and since then, she's been staying in touch with me, and she'll reach out to me. I don't know, probably maybe once a month or something like that, and she's like, Kevin, she goes, here's a couple guests that I think that you might really appreciate being able to interview for your podcast, and what's really cool is that not once has she steered me wrong. Every single time she has messaged me, and I followed up on that and did a podcast interview with who she was suggesting. It has been an amazing experience. And so now I always look forward to Brianna's emails. And
Well, let me echo the pleasantry and thank you to Brianna as well and the team.
yeah, for sure. Well, Frank, what I'd like to do is I want to start off by just turning it over to you so that we can set a little bit of context here and give our listeners a little bit of idea about who Frank Carone is and what Frank's all about. And why don't we just talk a little bit about, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do and the impact you make in the world, Frank?
Well, thank you for that. It's an interesting question, and for many years, particularly as a younger person, I struggled with the fact that why they didn't focus on one area of life and specialize in such an area like a surgeon or an area that had a more specific role. And I then realized as I developed into a more accomplished attorney that what I did was really just as valuable in that in a entrepreneurial environment where our creative natures allow us to evolve and to develop into different people. And so it's a question without an easy answer. I'm still developing who I am, but I'm doing it within the confines of a certain set of skill sets that I think have proven for me to be valuable and for my clients and colleagues and friends and family and employees and partners along the way. And really what it is today, it evolved into just to go maybe backwards, you're providing navigation and problem solving strategies in the intersection of legal, regulatory, and political environments, which is a large part of what businesses have to encounter if you're going to work in the United States or even abroad through different jurisdictions and countries, because most industries are highly regulated, and they're those regulations are sometimes subject to interpretation and need navigation, and there's a legal overlay. So combining my 31 years as a lawyer and litigator and my several decades in politics and understanding bureaucracy and regulation, I've now sort of come to a place where in that intersection, we try to bring value to institutions. And in order to do that, it begins with a certain mindset, a mindset of listening, getting to know your clients really well, not only their business objectives, but their fears, their obstacles, their past experiences. So that's what we're doing today at Oak Tree Solutions, and together with partnering with our law firm at Abrams Fensterman, essentially trying to workshop problems and finding solutions and creating value for the organizations that call upon us. And that's also not limited to those that just can afford to pay. Sometimes you have to do the same for others in the not-for-profit sector, the philanthropic sector, because it goes back to the whole point of relationships and building those credibly, although, ideally for profit, not only does it not always so delinear, it's not always so linear, and sometimes you have to just be willing to listen to just about anyone, provided your time is not being abused.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and I want to really draw that out a little bit because what you said there, Frank, about just listening to others, so many entrepreneurs are, we got a lots of networking stuff all the time. And a lot of entrepreneurs are of the mindset of, well, I'm gonna make hay while the sun is shining here. And I'm gonna talk with as many people as I can and let as many people know about what I do. And versus if you go into that environment and like, I'm just gonna start conversations with them and genuinely listen. And when we just show up that way, man, that is so powerful. And I kind of discovered that years ago without not trying to be strategic about it, but one of the biggest reasons I love hosting this podcast so much is I love talking with entrepreneurs. I love hearing about what they're working on, what their aspirations are, what their goals are, what their challenges are. And I always just default to, oh, who do I know that might be able to help them? But what I've found out is by just genuinely listening to others and then even like asking clarifying questions about what they're sharing with us, we end up giving people this gift that they so seldom really get to receive, which is this gift of feeling seen, heard, and understood. And that's exactly what you were just talking about. And I can guarantee, and like I said, when I got a copy of your book from Matthew, and I found out that the foreword was written by Dan Sullivan, I was like, I knew right then you and I were on the same page. And so because Dan is one of the deepest thinkers and one of the best question askers I know. And so
Well, think about it, Kevin. I mean, how good do you feel when you know you're being heard, whether you're speaking to your doctor, your spouse, your colleague, your business partner, and you can't do that unless you're listening, and listening takes patience,
yeah,
and it takes, removing a certain sense of ego, and you know what you want to say. The objective is for me to extract from you information that is helpful so that I could best serve you. And I always try to, and this is maybe for those starting in this area, I always try to become habitual for my really important clients and colleagues, meaning being a person who intuitively understands and intuitively listens such that value added advice can be extracted. It becomes part of my client's habit to want to speak to me on a routine basis. And over time, that has brought tremendous fruit for me through referrals and opportunities. And it would not happen if I'm doing all the talking all the time, because I'm going to miss key points and fail to understand the real, my Yiddish friends, they call it tachlis, the real MS, what it is, the real point of what it is they're trying to articulate to me. And it may be a simple problem. Most of them are less complicated than people make them out to be, with a little bit of patience, or an intractable problem that is needs a little bit more strategy and finesse.
yeah, yeah. That is such powerful stuff right there for sure. Well, okay, so now that we've got a little bit of context set here, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit and I'm going to reiterate the question around relationships for the benefit of our listeners. So, Frank, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
I'm just the names are flowing through me so palpably that it's very hard to limit it to just one. So I'm going to take my best stab at answering the
Okay.
question as best as I can. And I'm going to say more so, it's been a collection of individuals along the way that I've been blessed to encounter. And my father gave me, who passed at the age I am now, over 20 years ago, who always, taught me to not only learn from people, but not only successes, but also failures. So I was always in tune to be open-minded and listen to those that I thought brought value. But for me, it starts with, family. And we grew up in the streets of Canarsie, a section of Brooklyn, and many people like to say they're from Brooklyn, but Brooklyn is a large place. As a matter of fact, the largest Democratic county in the United States of America, almost 4 million people. But the streets of Brooklyn in the 70s are a different story altogether, where you had to learn grit, you had to learn to be credible, you had to learn to not mislead. And coming from that area, learning that grit and family unit, although not having much resources, but having a lot of love and support. I don't recall my grandparents, my dad, my mom ever, raising their voice at all. I don't remember ever being misled or lied to, other than, of course, my mother telling me my German Shepherd ran away, but I think they got rid of him because he was biting too many people. But other than that little anecdote, I grew up in a very, very loving household, which allowed me to be myself, right? And to try to find my niche and build my desire for economic freedom out of Canarsie. And a couple of quick stories. I remember I was a very avid baseball player, playing for Canarsie High School, a local school that I went to. And I remember I was thinking about joining Bricklayers Union. I was thinking of working for a bread route. I was thinking of applying for a civil service job. And I remember telling my baseball coach, his name was Bobby Napa, who I admired very much, that, hey, I'm going to be considering one of these jobs. He looked at me just incredulously and said, why would you do that? You're such a smart person. And it never dawned on me that maybe just getting a civil service job where I was, following the footsteps of most people in the blue collar neighborhood of Canarsie, there's another path. And I had the history because I was always buying and selling things, even as a young boy, scrapping change together to buy comic books, selling flowers on the corner, selling Canarsie curry and newspapers on the L train, for a quarter. Never forget, I had a big bundle in my arm and a big bumblebee landed on my arm, and I couldn't drop my product because I only had like $2 or $3 worth of product, and if I dropped it, I'd lose it. So I had to take the sting and then sell the papers on the train. And then later on, those experiences really stuck with me. Hard work, how to hustle, how to not be afraid to put in the effort. Jen was reminding me earlier that those very comics that I would buy as a 11, 10-year-old, I sold to pay for 1 year of law school later on in life. And then when I started making some revenue that I could buy, I started collecting again, and it's been a labor of love. But my coach was my family, my coach. Another two are, but this is limited, including but not limited to, because the
Okay.
list could go on and on and on. And I don't want, obviously, I want to give everybody who helped me navigate my life their proper due, but I'll just highlight a few. And later, I received a phone call looking for my younger brother from the United States Marine Corps. And I started messing with the recruiter on the phone, asking him about, college programs and whatever. And he said, I don't, but I'm going to have somebody else call you. And a fellow called me named Captain Samuels. And I got to know Captain Samuels while I was in law school. And I applied for officers candidate school, the judge advocate general program at Quantico. And I was disqualified because I had asthma as a child.
Oh,
And I remember Captain Samuel, he looked at me and he said, we're not going to go down without a fight. We're going to appeal. We're going to work at it. And he was right. We won our appeal. I was accepted into officers candidate school, and I graduated as a second lieutenant in 1993 or 1992, I think, as a United States Marine. So Captain Samuel had an impact on me in terms of persevering and overcoming, as did the rest of the Marine Corps, of course. It was so compelling, the training, that I remember studying for the bar exam and hearing my colleagues and classmates stressed and complaining about the upcoming bar exam. And I remember thinking to myself, wait a minute, we're reading books in an air-conditioned library. This is hardly something to be complaining about. And you know, kept using the, you know, sort of the context of training for war versus reading books. And it just, that training helped me, and Captain Samuel helped me, and the other drill sergeants that I come across my way. And then, of course, to bring the story full circle with you Marines, when President Clinton was elected, downsizing the military, and I was able to ask for an honorable discharge because the seats where I needed to go to Naval Justice School were shrinking. I went to a longtime family friend, then lawyer, future assemblyman named Frank Setio, who knew my dad growing up in Canarsie as well. And I would always help him hang his Christmas lights, and let me sell Christmas trees in front of his house on Flatlands Avenue in Canarsie. And I said to Frank, you know, what should I do? Should I put in for the honorable discharge, or should I accept the partnership offer I was being made by another law firm? And he said something to me that stuck with me. He said, whatever decision you make will be the right one. And it sounds like it's not advice at all, but it was very powerful advice, because it meant I'm not going to look back. Whatever I decide to do, however it shakes out, the decision is made, and I never look back. And I've been really lucky to have that character trait. I don't look back and regret, even if I made a mistake. This mistake could have been something that had to happen to open up another opportunity for me. So really, it's been men like that along the way, and of course, learning and living vicariously through the thousands of clients I've had for the law firm, and picking up pieces of experience along the way, you know, put together my character today. So
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And you're right, man. What powerful insight that was, and I can only imagine what a profound shift that is, not just on your life over the years, but the lives of so many others, because it just empowered you to just know that, well, whatever decision I make, it's going to be the right decision, you know, and I can't mess this up. And that's a really empowering place to come from and stuff, you know. And so if you look, you know, I mean, even starting from your dad, or, you know, any of these relationships, I'm sure you could come up with a number of examples of this, but I just want to encourage you to come up with one. It'll probably just be just something that comes right to the top of your mind as I ask the question. If you look at all these relationships that you've had in your life, what's an example where you personally, you got to make a really big impact? And maybe in that moment, maybe it even surprised you a little bit. We were like, wow, that is really awesome. But you also know that would have never happened if not for your relationship with whoever that was. What's an example of something like
well,
that
you
for you?
know, you said whatever comes right to mind, and Kevin, and I'm going to do that. To
Okay.
me, I think the most important impact I've had on a person, and really a city, was when the then borough president Eric Adams came to me, and he asked me to support his candidacy and get behind his candidacy as a major, in a leadership way, to run for the mayor of the city of New York, and he won. That started in my office. That started with a one-on-one conversation. And from that conversation and all the relationships I brought to that, political relationships, relationships in labor, relationships in the business community, so we raised the appropriate amount of money. We got the appropriate amount of support amongst the city political establishment. All of that came together in a beautiful mosaic and it became a successful campaign. When Mayor was way down in the polls. He wasn't even, many people didn't give him a chance. But that was, you know, the biggest success I've had. If you really want to say what has been impactful,
Yeah.
and that's maybe an obvious one, and a very important one. But as Jen also reminded me yesterday, you know, along the way, my relationships are decades long. I try very hard to play a long game and I have friends from childhood. I have friends from law school. I have friends from college, friends from high school. I have employees that have been with me for decades. And not depending on whichever career or business we evolve into, whether it's from a law firm to a real estate development project to Oak Tree, stayed with me. Through banking, I've been on boards of banks and those employees, many of them become, very, very wealthy, particularly the ones that specialize in sales under the tutelage and under the, steady hand of what I hope I brought to the table. It sounds a little presumptuous for me to take credit for their successes, but I'd like to think if they were asked, they would give me a modicum of credit for helping them navigate and improve their business careers along the way.
For sure. Well, I'll tell you, I had the opportunity to connect about a month ago with two people on your staff, Matthew and Jen and stuff. And through talking with them and us just them getting to know me and me getting to know them a little bit and what you guys are all about and stuff. One thing that really stood out when I was talking with Matthew and Jen was, just through the course of the conversation, I'm just curious. I asked lots of questions, and so I was asking Matthew, so how long you been working with Frank? And he said, oh, I've been about 3 years. We were talking about that. And when I asked Jen, she's like, oh, I've been with him for 20 years. I'm like, 20 years. I'm like, wow. I'm like, Jen, I was like, nobody stays with anybody for no 20 years if it's not a rewarding relationship. And so, I mean, what a testament right there that you have, Frank, that Jen has been with you for that many years. And just she and one thing that there was no mistaking or no hiding was their passion for their involvement with what they get to do with you and stuff. I mean, they spoke so highly of you. And Matthew was like, Kevin, I'm going to get your address because I want to send you a couple of Frank's books and stuff. And I mean, they are, they, and that speaks volumes about, you as a person too. And so I just kind of wanted to bring that up because, man, it's really cool to see stuff like that. And so, um,
I'm happy to hear that.
yeah. So I really appreciate.
I just got to add one more to that because I
Yeah,
would
go
be,
right ahead, Frank.
and I have to say the same for my younger brother, both of my brothers. My younger brother Anthony, who when we began in banking, and Jen was there from the beginning. Most of these things start on a napkin. I just happen to like the napkin writing. And then from there, you develop and you see all of a sudden you have this going concern with clients and value. But back in the beginning of one of my entrepreneurial endeavors in mortgage banking, which we ultimately sold before the crisis in '06 for several $1 million, very successful. We had 300 employees. My brother, who was just leaving the federal probation office, just starting as a lawyer, came to work doing real estate closings. He ultimately managed his own practice. And then when I was leaving the practice to join what I thought was the greatest privilege of my life, which is running the city of New York under Mayor Adams, under a new administration, creating a team, creating a culture, something that I'll never be able to thank him enough for, great privilege. I said to my brother if he would then join into the firm that I was leaving and hold the client base together so everybody felt part of this endeavor. And just like clockwork, without hesitation, he joined, he gave up his firm to some degree, came into Abrams Fensterman, and then from there came right into Oak Tree with us, and he's been running it as the CEO. And without him, I could never do it. So it's another great example of a person who has followed my lead, and I hope I've led him in the right direction.
Well, it sounds like it's been a pretty amazing experience. And I'll tell you, I mean, because yeah, the way people talk about us behind our backs when we're not there, I mean, man, that just speaks volumes. That speaks volumes right there, and it makes an impression for sure. So.
Kevin, it brings me to a thought when you say the way people speak about you when you're not there. It's really the core tenet of relationships, I think, and that is credibility. And I'll use two words, not as a cliche, but just because we could dive into them with examples and how, but credibility and authenticity. I don't think you could have credibility without authenticity.
Yeah.
And so authenticity may be the line in the sand. And in order to have real credibility, you need authenticity because people don't gravitate to fake individuals or people who are unpredictable and change their mind or erratic. But credibility is so critical. And that means sometimes admitting you're wrong. It means sometimes
Yep.
pivoting when you have to.
Yep.
And that will ensure that people and colleagues and potential clients speak highly of you and employees. And then your business will flourish
Yep.
when it's being spoken of when you're not there. And it cannot happen without a real focus on credibility.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Yeah. And I'll tell you, especially in this day and age, um, man, I see it all the time. And as I'm talking with entrepreneurs all the time, that they're just looking for real, meaningful connection with like-minded people. That's what they want. And we don't have to be perfect, none of us are. And but you know what? We all have what Dan Sullivan calls our unique abilities, and pretty much everything else in life that's outside of our unique abilities we pretty much suck at. But those unique abilities that we have are our god-given gifts and abilities, that we just keep getting better at using those, becoming more and more effective. And we don't have to be great at everything. We got lots of people around us who can be great at a lot of different things that we're not. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know something, but you know what? I know somebody who might, and I'm gonna find out an answer. I'm gonna get you connected with them and stuff, you know, and that's powerful. So
That's so true. And it reminds me of my co-author, who I also should give some credit to, is Russ Prince. Russ, by the way, also grew up in Canarsie. When I was reading a book once upon a time, I think it was Bargaining Brilliance by Louis Schiff. The forward to the book, he mentions one of his mentors is Russ Prince, who grew up in this gritty section of Canarsie. So I reach out to Russ in an email. He responds within like 5 seconds, and we have a breakfast together. And at that point, I was just joining Abrams Fensterman, the law firm had about 35 lawyers, and we got along and we connected right away. And he's been by my side every step of the way, workshopping with me, helping me develop. But Russ says to a lot that says to me a lot that some of this stuff, unique ability, I do just by nature. But the truth is, the skill sets necessary to build $1 million relationships that stand the test of time can be learned. It could be learned. There is a process. We write about the process in our book. We try to write it in user-friendly format so it's easy, comprehensible. But it is something that can be learned whether you're comfortable with it or not.
yeah,
And that's good, and that it should be that way. But it requires, I think, first and foremost, the proper mindset to agree and acknowledge that that is what I want, that is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to make it my entire being of developing relationships, credible relationships along the way that I could hopefully bear fruit for me. I don't know when, how, or if, but ultimately they will.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Frank, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. For anybody that's listening to this, going, man, Kevin, I really appreciate Frank, and any resources we can share, any websites we can share with them for anybody who might want to find out more information about what you're doing and what you're working on.
Yes, yes, and I just want to make sure I look at my notes. And yes, it's everyonewinsbook.com. That
Okay.
is a link to our new version of Everybody Wins. And in there'll be information about my contact, and folks feel free to reach out at any moment, any given time. Be happy to respond. and everyonewinsbook.com. It's been a labor of love over. This is a collection of experiences that have proven the test of time for Russ, for Russ's clients, for me and my clients, and we're pretty proud of this product.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Frank, any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
I just want to reiterate that none of us are really here on an island. And I remember listening to a judicial candidate winning an election, and she gave a speech saying, I didn't get here alone. And you asked me the initial questions, who helped me, who did I help? And it all stems from relationships, whether good, bad, you never, even the bad sometimes, could have been a lot worse. So you better be grateful for the bad. But most people's success comes through a collection of relationships. So embrace them. Don't just collect them and push them aside. One of the things I love about Mayor Adams so much is that he is a real person. He's not a person who's a fair weather friend, if you will, like many often in politics. So putting aside the political arena, which is very selfish in nature, the business arena is filled with people yearning for value-added friends. And to any young person looking to start whatever dream they have, do it. Don't burn bridges. It's not a zero-sum game. Admit your mistakes, learn from them, and keep moving forward. You'll certainly break through. You just never know when.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, once again, Frank, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you. And I'm excited to get this out there and share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs. So thanks again.
My pleasure, Kevin. Look forward to it.